Hello, Mr. Hâj. You are co-chair for the Working Group of Fundamental Values. And I wanted to ask you, please, if you could explain which are the fundamental values in higher education within the Bologna process.
So, according to the Paris Ministerial Communiqué, the fundamental values within the European higher education area are academic freedom, academic integrity, institutional autonomy, student and staff participation in higher education governance, and public responsibility for and of higher education.
And the objectives of this working group, could you please detail it for us a bit?
Yes, the main objective of this working group was to come up with a system, technical framework for monitoring the fundamental values, while at the same time ensuring self-reflection, peer learning, and to come up with a way to monitor the way member states understand and commit to upholding the fundamental values.
And did you come up with this framework? Because we were speaking with David Crozier earlier, and he found it a bit difficult to establish this framework.
Yes, when talking about fundamental values, it's quite hard to come up with a system for monitoring the commitments towards upholding these values. What we've done in the working group was first to define the common understanding of these fundamental values. Within the Rome Ministerial Communiqué, the ministers agree of a common understanding for academic freedom, but the rest of the fundamental values still needed a common understanding within the HEA framework. During time, there were many definitions, many understandings within different frameworks regarding some of the fundamental values. For other fundamental values, there was no written, agreed upon common understanding. So that was our first task, to come up, following the model for the academic freedom, to come up with the common understanding and definitions for these fundamental values.
Would you say, I'm sorry, that it's difficult to find this common definition because of cultural differences?
Yes, but it is important to have a common understanding, because different countries, different regions have different views on these academic freedoms, academic values. If we talk about student and staff participation, that's highly dependent on the history of the country, and some countries have done this for a lot of time. Some countries started recently to have students as partners within the academic community. So it's important to have a common understanding when discussing about these fundamental values, and especially when monitoring their implementation. And that was our first step, to come up with these definitions and these statements. And then we started looking at how we could monitor these fundamental values. We started with looking at what already exists at this point, what indicators already exist associated with these fundamental values, then what if they are fit for the purpose, for our purpose, regarding our understanding of these fundamental values, and then come up with new indicators that should be used within our understandings of these fundamental values, especially on those areas where there wasn't too much experience in the international level. So we've proposed to the BFUG a general framework at this point for monitoring these fundamental values, and we are starting now to pilot this framework in 4 countries based on the experience at the national level. For those 4 countries, we will propose a final monitoring framework for the next period that will be governed, that would be implemented by the next BFUG and next working group. And we hope to be part of the next monitoring system of the Bologna process.
Could you tell us which 4 countries?
We had a discussion here. We haven't fully decided on the countries. We have proposed 4 different countries, geographically size related, but we haven't finalized the list, so I wouldn't go now at this point in spoiling the surprise for those countries especially.
Okay. Could you share any success or an example of good practices from Romania with regards in fostering the fundamental values?
Yes, first of all, Romania is leading one of the main projects that has supported the work of the Fundamental Values Working Group. So because of that, it had the first knowledge about the developments regarding fundamental values. And being part of this project meant that we managed to organize a lot of peer learning activities, where we also invited national representatives, the Ministry of Education, Aracis and other institutions in Romania, with which we managed to have a exchange of knowledge about the work of the Fundamental Values Working Group, about the developments within the Romanian higher education system. And I think that helped a lot in the development of the national, the higher education law in Romania, which at this point includes clear references towards the fundamental values in higher education. So from that point of view, I do think that this project is a good practice example of the transferring the knowledge from a project, from a process, international process, towards national legislation. When we will have we will start the process of monitoring fundamental values, Romania will probably be one of the top countries because we already have most of the fundamental values defined within the law. Other countries will start based on these statements that will be annexed to the ministerial communique in Tirana to develop their own legislation and include in their legislation these fundamental values. We already started that, and I do think that's a plus for Romania as well.
Good. So thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.